panelists today. We have Mark Costello. He's at his company is called Wasted. And Mark, if you can just wave your hand so people can see who you are.
Morning.
Great. Welcome, Mark. And then we have Sneha Solanki from a company called Liminal. Yeah, and here's Sneha. Welcome. And
Hi, everyone.
last but not least, we have Kuhl, who's at Optera. You can wave your hand. Okay. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to have a panel conversation. It's going to be around 30 minutes or so. I have a lot of questions prepared for our three panelists, but you are also welcome to ask questions in the Q&A box. And you should find it below on your Zoom in the panel there. You should find the Q&A box. And there you can ask questions. You can vote on other people's questions. And that's where we'll keep our questions for today. And then, yeah, after our panel will be about 30 minutes, and then we'll have a round or two of short networking breakout room sessions. So that'll be towards the end, where you can just sort of have a quick like, hi, who are you? And maybe even schedule for a follow-up conversation. So with that, I'd like to start with our three panelists, and I have some questions, and I'd like to start with just kind of hearing from all three of you, what if you can share a bit about yourself and your background and your journey into the role you have now within the climate sector, and then kind of while you're doing that, can you also tell us a little bit about what your company actually does? What does maybe a typical day look like for you in your work, and also maybe what are some of the specific skills that you are leaning into that you find most valuable for sales and business development roles in the climate sector. So with that, maybe we'll start with you, Mark. Do you want to just kick us off and share a little bit about you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Very excited to be here. So thank you for everyone taking time out of your day. I spent a lot of time on the other side of the screen at these TerraDo webinars. So it is possible to break in and make it. So I'm really excited to be here sharing with all of you. But yeah, a little bit about myself. So I currently live in Baltimore, Maryland in the US. And my background comes from heavy industrials. So spent about 8 years in the steel industry. I also spent some time in construction. So it was kind of a good job, a very needed product, but I just felt like something needed to change. So in 2022, I decided to take a sabbatical to through hike the Appalachian Trail. So I spent about 6 months hiking 2,000 miles, or I think 3,500 kilometers from Georgia to Maine in the US. And as you can imagine, it gave me a lot of time in the outdoors to think. So I knew I wanted to do something else. I wasn't just quite sure what it was. And what really clicked for me is figuring out that it wasn't only scientists and engineers that we needed working on climate change or like climate solutions. So once I kind of figured out like, hey, we have a lot of the technologies that are out there. We just need people to scale and sell and communicate these solutions. So that really was kind of a turning point for me. So at that point, it was like climate work became my North Star. I was like, how do I get to where I want to be? I know where I want to go. How do I get there? So I went through the TerraDo Learning for Action program in the spring of 2023. Ultimately, didn't land the climate job I wanted, but continued to learn, upskill, network, and very happy to report I now work for a company called Wasted. And Wasted is catalyzing circular sanitation and changing the way people think about waste. So specifically what the company does is we have a couple different business units, but the one arm, we're taking urine and converting it into fertilizer for use in organic farms. So our urine stream is mainly nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So we're adjusting those levels, working, okay, instead of it being wasted, how can we kind of reuse those resources out on the land? And specifically, I am working for a product called Offgrid that does non-network sites. So state parks, national parks, anywhere that doesn't have traditional septic systems. So I didn't necessarily see myself working in like waste management per se, but company is sustainability first and kind of saying we need this in all different areas. It doesn't have to all be, the sexiest areas of sustainability. We need these kind of in all our different streams of work. So that is a little bit about me, and I'll stop it there.
Thank you so much. That's great. Yeah, why don't we hear a little bit from you, Sneha? What was your journey into climate, and what does your work entail, and what are some of the skills that you lean into?
Thanks, Louise. So I'm Sneha. I'm currently calling from San Francisco, and I am doing business development at Liminal. I started my career as a chemical engineer working in the chemical industry, which, for almost a decade. I worked for companies that make plastics, pesticides, you name it. While these companies were filled with talented and good people and wanted to do good for the environment, I just felt that these companies, even though they wanted to change, they weren't fast enough. So I grew increasingly, concerned about, how can we do things more quickly? Where are the solutions, and how can we implement them in a way that sort of disrupts this space? And that led me to doing an MBA at Haas at UC Berkeley. I did that over evening and weekends to be able to kind of gain more skills and focus them on climate and sustainability solutions. And at that time, they were offering a lot of courses that helped gain those skills. And now it's even more. But anyway, so the MBA led me to do a lot of different projects in the climate and sustainability sector and try out different functions as well. Like I did a little bit of investing, a little bit of consulting, and so on. And this exploration led me to realize that my passion lies in working in startups that are focused on new technologies and disrupting the space that they are in. So that led me to my current role at Liminal, which is an early stage startup that is focused on battery manufacturing intelligence. So using ultrasound and machine learning, they've developed a technology that can help inspect EV batteries while they are being manufactured. And why this matters is that if we can make batteries, of high quality at a higher productivity, then we can bring down the cost of batteries and increase, the adoption of electric vehicles in the market. So yeah, as a business development manager, my focus is on developing partnerships as well as increasing our top of line funnel for our customers. And that's a little bit about me. Yeah, I'm happy to share more as we go forward. Thanks, Louise.
Thank you, Sneha. I just want to let everybody know this seems to be, I have issues. I can't type in the chat. It won't let me. So I'm just going to say it out loud. I have some questions prepared, but feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box. And there we can collect from there. How about you, Derek? Let's hear a little bit about your journey and what your company actually does and what are some of the skills that you're leaning into.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Derek Kuhl. I'm based in New York City, and I'm VP of Sales for a company called Optera that's based out of Boulder, Colorado. I'll explain what we do in a second. How I got here is I've spent most of my career in sales and marketing lead roles, mostly in B2B software companies. So I've been in ad tech for a long time, ed tech, et cetera. And I also took a sabbatical last year. Took 6 months to figure out what I wanted to do next, and ended up doing the Terra Learning for Action program as well. I see at least, hey, Lori, I see at least one of the other cohort members on here. So what that gave me was an ability to go from I want to do something in climate to be able to go out and say I'm looking to run B2B sales and marketing at either climate software or climate services companies in the B2B space. So that allowed me to go from what can I do to having a narrative out in the market. Ended up interviewing in a number of firms and ended up at Optera. Optera, we are a carbon accounting and sustainability program management software company, really built for the world's largest, most complex value chains. So our clients include a lot in the high tech space like NVIDIA, Intel, Cisco, HPE, et cetera. We also do a lot with large retailers like Lowe's, Target, et cetera. But our specialty is really the companies with the most complex global value chains how can we build the right carbon accounting software and sustainability program management tools to allow them to achieve their targets, which ultimately will be net zero targets, out in future years. And I'd say specific skills. What I found was all companies need the same things in certain functions. Coming in as the VP of sales, that we needed to build sales management tools and pipeline and forecast. We needed to rebuild a more compelling sales narrative. I need to coach and manage salespeople. And really, it was the domain expertise that they took that I couldn't have interviewed without the Terra course. It definitely was not a master's in the topics at all, but it gave me enough footing, grounding to have them take a bet on me and say, we know you can learn the carbon accounting space. Let's bring the skills you've built over your years from the sales and marketing perspective.
Amazing, thank you. So I love how different, you come from very different parts of the climate solution space. So that's super interesting. So I'd love to get into some questions about you on the job, and maybe I'll start with you, Derek. Maybe we can continue with you. And so if I ask, how do you approach identifying potential partners and clients who align with your mission versus potential clients who are skeptical about investing in climate solutions? What are your thoughts?
Two thoughts that I answer. One is, we're laser focused on knowing who our ideal client is. So there's a lot of different carbon accounting solutions out there for companies from very small SMEs to the world's largest manufacturers. We really play in the small manufacturing and retail space on the enterprise side. And then in terms of approaching partners, I think what's happening right now in at least the ESG space at large companies is there's different viewpoints on its prioritization, on what's needed for the program, et cetera, even within the same company. Is this mostly being approached from a regulatory reason with some of the European regulations and potential, California and SEC regulations? That's a very different lens from we need to decarbonize because our B2B customers are asking us to decarbonize our value chain so we can help decarbonize their value chain. And then there could be a third that is about energy management, and it's actually shifting to a more sustainable program can actually reduce energy costs over time. So you have all those different viewpoints that are all coming together to make a decision about buying software. So we have to understand what's the driver of decisions, not only at the company, but at the personal level, and then translate that into the sales conversation.
Thank you, Derek. How about you, Sneha? What would you say? How do you approach identifying potential partners and clients who align with your mission versus, potential clients who are skeptical about investing in climate solutions?
Yeah, I think my example is quite different than, Derek's example, where we function our customers are in more of an established industry making batteries, right? Our customers are battery manufacturers who are really motivated to reduce waste and improve quality of their product. There's been so many recalls due to EV battery fires and whatnot, and there's a motivation there to get to know a lot about the quality of the batteries while they are being made, and yet there will be skepticism because we are bringing in a new technology, we are bringing in an innovative solution to that. So there's headwinds and tailwinds where our customers are willing to try new technologies, but they move very slowly because it's an established industry. And how we sort of navigate that is through education, a lot of technical education, and talking with the engineers, with the people working on the line, and so on. And with respect to partnerships, that's also a very interesting approach. I feel like it has been a three-step approach for finding the right partners. One is that you need to have complementary strengths. Together you should be able to make a whole, and you should be able to create more value. Where they say you can create 1 + 1 = 3, and at the highest level, if the two organizations are aligned at the mission, in our case it is how can we make battery manufacturing more optimized? Then you can figure out different ways of combining the strengths and creating an effective partnership. So yeah, I think in my case, since our company operates in a more established industry, it's more about like, you know, making sure that we find the right people with the right motivation.
Thank you. Amazing. Over to you, Mark. Do you remember the question, or should I repeat it?
No, I remember the question. Thank you. I really like that, finding the right people with the right motivation. So I always came from a B2B, so business to business sales background. And in my current role, it's B2B, but also B2C. And what I think of is meeting people where they are. So connecting on shared values, it doesn't always have to be from a sustainability or a climate impact space. So I'm selling toilets at the very basic. We have a portables end, and then I work in the non-networked toilet. So some people are very much, they like the fact that there's no water, no electricity, you know, putting nutrients back to the soil, human health, all those aspects. But some people just want a cleaner, low maintenance. They want to have cost savings on their operations. So really kind of finding out like what values are important. And sometimes a solution may just be a better option all around. And you don't even need to talk about like the emissions that you save or, you know, other potential environmental benefits. So I think really connecting on shared values and meet people where they're at when it comes to sales.
Great, thank you. So I have a question here, and I'm going to sort of combine it a little bit with some of the questions I have already. There's a question from Arun. He's asking what unique challenges and opportunities exist when selling or developing business relationships in the climate space. And maybe I would even sort of, are there any common misconceptions or any differences in the sales cycle length or complexity or any of that you can speak to? And maybe we'll start with you, Derek. You know, what are some of the unique challenges and opportunities?
Yeah. So I think probably, I mean, being in carbon accounting software is there aren't really like unique challenges versus other sectors. I would say the challenges we face as an industry around this is so much uncertainty about the future. Uncertainty about regulations, uncertainty about political parties. And so what it's causing is companies to really be cautious about making large purchasing decisions because they're working with a lot of unknowns. So we can control some of that, we can't control some of that, but I think that is a challenge, and my guess is it affects other parts of the climate space beyond like carbon accounting software, but the uncertainty of what the future is going to look like in the regulatory government space, but also in other spaces, expectations of customers, et cetera, causes a lot of long deal cycles and indecisions during those deal cycles.
Thanks. How about we move to you, Mark?
I think Derek hit a lot of the points that I was going to touch on. I think sometimes it can be a longer sales cycle just with the uncertainty. And I think kind of going back to my last point about like finding out what is really important to the customer. And it may be regulatory, it may be they want to signal to their customers that they're, you know, more environmentally conscious. And I think that really motivates people differently to act on different timescales. So yeah, I think just kind of being knowledgeable on trends and make sure that you're actually like asking those questions and kind of finding out what those barriers are and trying to overcome them.
Thank you. How about you, Sneha? Any differences or that you've noticed?
Yeah, I guess you know, the sales cycle can highly depend on, you know, the nature of your own product, whether it's hardware or software or a combination, as well as, you know, where at what like phase your customers are in. Are they an emerging company or an established, you know, company or an industry? So in our case, you know, we have a hardware and a software combination of a product. So the sales cycle can be extremely long. And, you know, it kind of requires, you know, a lot of upfront education about the new technology we are bringing in, followed by a validation phase where customers try out our product for a certain period of time. And then, you know, the negotiations for like an actual sales would begin. And so, yeah, it can, you know, really take a long time. And I feel in this case for us, it's more dependent on, you know, just the nature of our product than, that it's in a climate sector. So yeah, I think there's like just so many variances even within the examples of the three of us here. So it's interesting.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move us a bit in the direction. I think a lot of people have questions around how, kind of questions for aspiring climate sales and business development professionals, like how to actually break into this sector. So I'd like to start with just a sort of an open question to all three of you around what advice would you give to someone looking to pivot their career into climate-focused sales or business development? And then we can take some more of the more specific questions after that. But sort of what are some advice that you would give someone? And why don't we start with you, Sneha?
So this question, I think I'd like to give a two-pronged answer for that. So for people who are trying to pivot industry from a non-climate sector to a climate sector, but have the functional knowledge, for example, if you want to do BD and sales, and if you are already doing BD and sales in another sector, I think it might be an easier pivot. I think what would be most important in that case would be gaining the knowledge of the product and the industry you're in, and then growing your roots in that industry by joining different programs or networking communities. And on the other hand, if you're trying to pivot functional roles, let's say if you're already in the climate sector, you have the climate knowledge or the technical knowledge, but you want to pivot into a more like business role and change your function. This is kind of what I had done. I think it can be a lot of like learning and education that you need to, I guess, a lot of time that you need to put in, but it's totally doable. There's so many different projects you can work on, and Terra.do seems to have a lot of good courses, as well as, you don't need to do an MBA, but it certainly makes it easier, as it did for me. So yeah, I think it's good to think about, what your what do you want out of the new role or the new chapter of your career? Is it, change in function, change in sector, or both?
Thank you. I was just reading through all the Q&A. Yeah. Okay, Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with all of the above, what she said, but so additional thoughts are one, when I made the decision to start looking for a full-time job again, as I was going through the Terra course, set out I'm going to meet with 2 people a day in the space. But first had to craft that narrative, like I said before, of like being able very quickly when I'm introduced to someone to say, I run B2B sales and marketing teams at software or services companies, and I'm looking to find an opportunity to run teams like that in climate. That allowed people to make introductions for me. And what I did find and got advice on, which hopefully some of you have found too, is I would say this industry, climate's not really an industry, but let's pretend it is, that this space is much more network friendly than any other space. People want to introduce you to other people. People want to get you into this space. So I found a lot more openness to helping, introductions, cold conversations that ended up being 40-minute coffees. And that was really fundamental in finding my role.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, love all the points that Sneha and Derek made. I'll just add one thing, be resilience. So similar to how we need to respond to the current climate crisis, if you want your climate career search to be successful, you really need to be resilient. So I was overconfident. I had an MBA. I took the Terra course. I thought I was going to be, hot stuff out in the market. But if you really want this, just continue to network, continue to upskill, and to echo what Derek said, of course, I think you should take the Terra.do Learning for Action program, but any way you can speak intelligently to potential, recruiters or hiring managers really helps. Because if I say, oh, I listened to a podcast and I'm really worried about our warming world, that doesn't have as much of an effect if I say I was intentionally took this 12-week course learning about the problem solution landscape, and you can really talk to those points. And then one thing that I didn't take my own advice, but climate is such a broad space where I was like overwhelmed by the amount of things that I wanted to do. And some great advice I've gotten is like, don't try to boil the ocean, which is a sales term. It's essentially find the space that you think you can be impactful in and you're passionate about, and trust that other people are working on these concurrent problems. So don't try to solve everything, just really focus on the niche that you're in, because you'll stay more resilient and avoid burnout better that way.
Wonderful, great advice. And so there's some specific questions here in the chat. There's some specific about specific roles, you know, customer success role, client success, or UX designers. And I'd love to, there's another kind of specific question also from David here. He says, really interesting to see the diversity of backgrounds. Was wondering if you all had a specific company profile in mind in your search, i.e. early stage startup, more established company, and if so, how did you ultimately decide which type of company to work for? So I wonder if any of you have some thoughts on that.
Hey, I have some pretty specific thoughts for my sector, but I went out a little bit like Mark was saying as well, a little bit probably overconfident, but very quickly was like, I'm looking for a VP sales job at a Series C, Series D climate company. And talked to a number of venture firms, et cetera, and they were like, a lot of funding happened a couple of years ago, and now we're sort of in a holding pattern around that. There aren't a lot of big funding deals. If you see them, there's a lot going behind the scenes. They were, needed the money in ways you don't necessarily want to fundraise around. So what it did, it was caused me to look much more early stage than I thought I would when I went out into the market. And so there was more opportunity at like Series A, Series B software companies. So while Optera's been around for 20 years, it was sort of self-funded as consulting and then software. And we just had our Series A last year. So it operates like an older company, but is probably earlier stage. And I got that advice from a number of people. It's like, widen your aperture for more earlier stage than you might be doing in other sectors.
Great, thank you. How about you, Mark, Sneha? Any thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I think what Derek said, I completely agree with that. For me, like, I think I was really excited about working at an early stage startup to begin with, because, that would help me work on many different aspects. I think that's something I did not touch upon early, but business development is not the same as sales, because I think it can be a lot of different things. You can mold it to be whatever you want it to be. And at an early stage startup, there's a need for generating revenue, there's a need for creating partnerships, there's a need for, raising funds, and, a business development person can do a lot of different things, including even marketing. So I wanted to do just that, and that's why like this role was just perfect for me. And I also wanted to leverage my technical engineering background and this, the product that we are in and the industry we are in, like, kind of helps me leverage those skills as well.
I'll just add one thing to that, similar to what I was saying about kind of focus your search. So there's a lot of levers we can pull. So I was doing volunteering, I was doing protesting, like policy advocacy, and ultimately I found myself, okay, instead of doing like a double pivot, I already have the functional area of sales. Let me do the singular pivot of finding a different industry I'm more passionate about. So that really helped me. I can still volunteer and do those things on the side and do trash cleanups, but take the sales and, I think just selling a widget I wasn't very passionate about, exponentially growth, higher targets each year. But if it's a product that is really making a difference and you believe in the mission, I think it's a lot easier to want to hit those targets. So I focused on a single pivot, and that was easier for me, staying in sales, but getting into climate.
And so just to build a little bit on that, thank you so much. I mean, you kind of touched upon it already, but I think this is an important point I think we can dig a little bit deeper. So, and I kind of want to combine this idea of how important networking is for you. I know you talked a little bit about it, but how important networking is within the climate sector and some effective ways that you did it. And I want to combine that with a question here from Kwang, who asks, outside of company stage, e.g. startup, series ABC, did it matter what type of climate company you joined? How did you figure out what type of climate company, energy, SaaS, carbon accounting, blah, 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 you were passionate about and wanting to join? So I'm wondering, like, was that part of your networking? How did you find out? Was that something you learned in those networking series, and how did you go about it? And maybe we'll start, whoever wants to go first, just get off mute.
I can jump
Yeah,
in.
okay.
So Derek mentioned, I think people are very welcoming. So I was reaching out to people on LinkedIn for informational interviews and pretty successful with that. But I was actually going to a lot of in-person networking events. And, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome in the beginning. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and I would take the train down to DC, which is about an hour or so. But try to find your community. And I would beg that they exist. I wasn't thinking Baltimore was advanced enough. It's not San Fran or Seattle or New York, but I found a Climate Tech Baltimore meetup, and that's ultimately how I found my job. Is I went to a networking event, met someone who was a farmer, went to business school, and then now got a climate job. And I was like, oh, I was the opposite. Like, I went to business school and now I maybe want to become a farmer. I did climate farm school, and I was like, do I just give up on it and do regenerative ag, which still maybe is in the cards on the side. But anyway, network, use LinkedIn, and if you can, go to in-person events, because it'll just kind of help fill your cup up if you're in person with people who are passionate about the same thing as you.
That's really amazing, Mark. To add to that, okay, if there aren't any meetups that are existing in your area, why don't you host one? You can host these events. There's something called as MCJ dinners. You only need like 5 to 8 people, and you can talk about topics that are important to you and to climate, and that can really create a network effect, pun intended. And in addition to that, to me, networking became a lot more authentic and natural when I started, just offering something to create a relationship. It could be, offering to connect someone with someone who is, let's say, looking for a job, and someone who's looking to hire, or just in general, offering something that can help someone out. I think that gives me a context to talk about, and also it comes out more naturally to bond on one particular topic. So those are like my 2, I guess, pro tips for networking.
And maybe I'll just another part of Gong's question around finding type of company doing it. Totally +1 to Mark, what Mark was saying of it's much easier to take your skills that you already have into a new space, but not try to also change both of those at the same time. And what I found was in the entire world of climate solutions, I can't tell you that carbon accounting software is my biggest passion. I love it and it's great. But what I found was I could apply skills to software that I understood and a business that I could really apply, that I could really help. And then I'm finding a lot of passion in the conversations I'm having. So it was less like the product, but I get to spend most of my time with like the leaders of ESG at Fortune 500 companies, who a lot of them are passionate about driving change and results in their companies, and that's amazing. And so I didn't have exposure to all of that before I came in, but that's sort of where I find my passion versus saying I'm passionate about this industry versus this part of the industry.
Fantastic. These are great stories. Thank you so much for sharing all this. So I have kind of a combined question for you, and this might be the last question before we have a little breakout room session, but no rush, take your time. But I'd love to talk a little bit, hear your thoughts about some of the latest development and the future in your field. So maybe you can share a little bit about, one thing is like, how do you stay updated on industry trends and innovations in your field? But also, what are some of the biggest opportunities or emerging trends that you see in your line of work? And which ones are you most excited about? So something about how you stay updated and what's coming and what are you excited about? Anyone who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go.
Derek, go first.
Yeah. So I say, staying updated, you can be inundated with information. So what I try to do is pick a topic and then try to look and see. There are some podcasts like, I'm just looking at my Spotify, Clean Techies, My Climate Journey, that are great. But often what I find is now, especially that I'm in the field, I need to go deep on like financed emissions, scope 3, category 15, because we're talking to a lot of private equity companies. So I'll go down a podcast rabbit hole of that, and then pick another topic and go down as well. So I'm more topic driven than podcast driven. And then I think industry trends in our field are like, it feels like Web 1.0 in some ways, where there are companies popping up all the time. It's a very crowded space. There's going to be a number of winners, a number of companies having a lot of challenges. So I think just understanding that companies that on the flip side, our customers are trying to make big buying decisions in that environment, and that's challenging for them. So what we try to do is help and advise and be seen as a trusted partner, because they're buying, like I mentioned before, with a lot of unknowns about the future and a lot of different types of decisions about the partner and software they want to work with.
Great, thank you. So how about you, Mark? Why don't you go next?
Yeah, and I actually maybe want to step back to the previous question about breaking in. I forgot to mention one part. So if you can and you have the bandwidth, don't be afraid to just get your foot in the door through consulting or freelance or part-time. It's something I never thought I would do, but I was working full-time in a non-climate job, and then I took up a part-time consulting gig, and it was at a startup just to kind of get my foot in the door in the climate space. So if you can find that and you have the bandwidth, because I like to say life doesn't exist in a bubble. There's lots of other variables, family, friends, things like that. So that's just kind of the last question. And then on staying updated, it's very easy to go down rabbit holes in podcasts, but I put together a little list that I will share in the chat. It's not earth-shattering. I know a lot of people have put together a list, but there's some books and podcasts that I like, so I'll share that.
Yeah, that was also oh, go ahead, Louise.
I was just going to ask Mark, maybe some of what are you maybe most excited about in the future of your line of work?
I'll keep it brief. I don't know if I have too much to add to that question. I'm pretty new to this space, and again, I didn't really know I'd find myself in waste management or selling toilets. But what I'm very excited about is finding kind of where I said connecting with people who are in the same mission as you. So I'm going to get to hopefully go to some cool places, some state, national parks, things like that. But it's people who are like, hey, we've had indoor plumbing and there's a lot of problems with leach fields and septic fields and cesspools and all that stuff. And it's like, how can we think about this differently? So I guess just kind of shaking up the industry that's been the same for a very long time. I'm excited. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Pass it to...
Yeah, go ahead, Sneha.
Yeah, I was just going to say how much I agree with Mark's advice about, just doing sort of a volunteering project or a consulting project, something that you want to try out before you dive in full 100%. So, for example, in the battery industry, there is an organization called Volta Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization that creates a networking community. So I am, a project coordinator for that foundation that has helped me not just get to network with a lot of people in the industry, but it also sort of helps me with my current role because I can reach out to potential customers and create offer them a platform to speak in events like these almost. And so, yeah, being able to do such nonprofit volunteering work can really have really good effects on even your full-time job. And the other question about, how do you keep updated? I think there's a lot of great podcasts and newsletters. But one trick that really helps me keep up with all the battery news is, setting up Google alerts on keywords that are important to you. So for me, it is battery manufacturing or, battery recalls and things like that. And I get like daily emails in the morning from just, any news articles in that involving those keywords as an email. So I feel like that has been the most useful trick that I've learned over the last couple of years. And about the trends happening in the industry, I think that is a difficult question for me because I've been on maternity leave for the last 3 or 4 months, and I've really not kept up with the different trends. But I think in general for BD and sales, it's so important to keep up with what's going on, not just in your sector, but like overall. Like there's like this general AI trend and energy trend that's happening, and if you're keeping your eyes and ears open, it can really impact your conversations with your customers and partners and whatnot.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all 3 panelists. So this was really, really eye-opening. I learned a lot from hearing all your thoughts and your learning from your experiences. And what I'd like to do now, because this is kind of partly a panel, but it's also a networking event. So I'd like to create just a single round of breakout rooms. You can go into a breakout room for 10 minutes. And there you will meet some, you can have a short conversation, but it can lead to a follow-up conversation if you like, right? So I'd like to put you into breakout rooms. And I think what we can do, actually, we'll put you into breakout rooms of 4 people. And you will have about 10 to 12 minutes. And I have a question for you. You can discuss. You can talk about what skills you're hoping to leverage, or what is the next step in your climate journey. And Candice is going to create some breakout rooms for you. So there will be 4 people for about 10 to 12 minutes. And then we'll stop the recording. And then we'll come back here and we'll do a little debrief at the end. And our 3 panelists are going to be in the breakout rooms as well. So some of you might meet them in a breakout room. If anyone have any questions or any difficulties entering a breakout room, let me know. It seems like it's working. And are you pausing the recording, Candice? Did you pause it?
I will do so.
Welcome back. Welcome back. People are coming back now. All right. So while we're waiting for people to come back, any insights, any aha surprises from today's sessions, feel free to share in the chat. Okay, we'll wait. Some people are still coming back.
Excuse me, could you remind me the name of the foundation she mentioned? That Sneha mentioned? If anyone wrote it down.
We'll ask her when she gets back.
Thank you.
I guess we forgot to tell people to stay until the timer was up, but that's okay. They're back in like half a minute or so, right, Candice?
3 seconds. I
3
did mention
seconds.
we will close up. So hopefully everyone will be joining us. Welcome back, everyone.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. I am just gonna share a few thoughts, but in the meantime, please put in the chat any insights, any aha surprises from today's sessions. Would love to hear from you. And just like a specific question, there was a foundation that Sneha mentioned, and we have a fellow who's curious what the name of that foundation is. So if you want to write that, Sneha. And then what I'd just love to share a little bit about learning for action, because both Mark and Derek shared that they had actually done this 12-week program called Learning for Action, which helped them change career into climate. So I just want to share a few words about what that is and how you can join that. So it's a course, it's an intensive exploration of climate science and climate impacts and climate solutions. And so it's a combination of written classes and live weekly lab sessions. There's also deep dives, there's expert guest talks and workshops, and it's all intended to help fellows learn about climate change and being able to find their role in it. And we offer a new cohort of Learning for Action every 6 weeks, and we urge you to check it out if you want to learn more on how you can become involved in addressing climate change. And our next cohort starts September 3rd, and we have 2 open houses events on August 20. And if Candice here will share her referral program. So if you want, you can use her referral program, her referral code. and that will give you, I believe it's 15 or 20% off. Yeah, for that next cohort, if any of you are interested. And other than that, we have 2 minutes left. If anyone has any kind of something that happened in your breakout room that you want to amplify with the whole group, feel free. Either put it in the chat or raise your hand. We have time for like 1 or 2 comments at the end. We'd love to hear any ahas, any surprises, any gratitudes, anything at all. If anyone has something to share.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciated that one of my buddies, Lareem, I believe, he had a couple tools that he offered to try and focus a little bit more of what you would like to do for your pivot. So one of them was the Ikigai diagram. And I forget the other one now. I should have written it down. But I'm already starting to just fill out things for the Ikigai. I'm just making a list of my passions, my skills, and try to go back through a little more fine tune of what is probably the next best step for me. So thank you.
Amazing. And through LFA, Learning for Action program, this is part of what we will explore a lot more in detail if any of you are interested. Yeah. Okay, well, anyone else? Last one?
I guess just thank you for everybody's time. Thank you for the speaker's time. Really helpful. Derek, really appreciated like your answer around like not needing to find the perfect climate company or area to get into and just figure out where to make your impact. That was something that I continue to oscillate over, and excited to do one of these fellowships, these 12-week fellowships with Tara or Climate-Based, whoever it may be, and continue the journey. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so with that, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank our 3 panelists. Thank you so much for coming here and spending your time and sharing your experience. And thank you to everyone who joined us on the call and for all your questions and your participations. This was really, really wonderful. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day and a continued happy climate journey.
Thank
Take care
you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.